There is a kind of exhaustion that sleep does not fix. You wake up tired, not because the body is weak, but because the mind never truly rested. Thoughts kept moving, rehearsing conversations, anticipating problems, replaying moments that already passed. Outwardly, everything may look stable. Inwardly, there is tension, noise, pressure. A life lived in reaction rather than direction. This video is not about becoming emotionless. It is not about suppressing feelings or pretending nothing affects you. Stoic philosophy never asked you to be cold. It asked you to be clear. There is a difference. One is denial. The other is strength. Inner peace does not collapse because life is difficult. It collapses because we demand control over what was never ours. We fight reality. We resist uncertainty. We attach our stability to outcomes, opinions, and events that refuse to obey us. Then we wonder why anxiety feels constant, why frustration feels inevitable, why the mind feels like a storm we cannot quiet. The Stoics observed something unsettling yet liberating. Epictetus wrote in the Enchiridion that some things are up to us and others are not. Simple words, severe implications. If you confuse the two, peace becomes impossible. If you separate them, the mind begins to reorganize itself. What you're about to hear is not theory for scholars. It is practical mental training. 7 rules, 7 shifts in perception. Not designed to change the world around you, but to change how the world moves inside you. Because when perception stabilizes, emotion follows. When reason returns to its proper seat, turbulence loses its authority. Listen carefully, not as entertainment, but as reflection. Not as passive information, but as something to test against your own experience. The goal is not agreement. The goal is recognition. Rule 1. Do not argue with reality. Peace is often lost long before any real damage occurs. It disappears in the silent moment when the mind says, "This should not be happening." Not a dramatic rebellion, but a subtle resistance. A traffic delay becomes an injustice. A criticism becomes an insult. An unexpected change becomes a personal attack by fate. The event is neutral, or at least manageable. The suffering begins in the argument. Marcus Aurelius reflects in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 4, that the obstacle is not outside you but in your judgment about it. Reality unfolds according to causes, conditions, and forces that do not consult your preferences. When you demand that events obey your expectations, friction is guaranteed, and friction sustained becomes emotional fatigue. Notice the hidden cost of resistance. Energy is consumed not by the situation itself, but by the refusal to accept that the situation already exists. The mind tightens, the body follows, emotion intensifies, yet nothing in the external world changes. You are paying a psychological price for a negotiation that cannot succeed. Acceptance is not surrender. It is accuracy. Seneca writes in Letters from a Stoic, Letter 13, that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. To accept an event means to see it clearly, without adding outrage, dramatization, or self-pity. It means saying, "This is what is happening. Now, what is within my control?" When the argument stops, something unexpected occurs. Clarity returns. Reaction slows. The mind shifts from protest to response. You are no longer fighting existence itself. You are working with it. And this simple shift conserves enormous mental energy. Most people believe peace requires changing circumstances. The Stoics teach the opposite. Peace begins when you stop demanding that reality be different before you allow yourself to be stable. Rule 2. Separate discomfort from catastrophe. Not everything that feels bad is bad. Yet the mind rarely makes that distinction. A moment of embarrassment becomes humiliation. A mistake becomes failure. A delay becomes disaster. The nervous system reacts not only to events, but to the meaning you attach to them. Label discomfort as catastrophe, and the body responds with anxiety, tension, urgency. Epictetus warns in Discourses of Epictetus, Book 2, that people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Discomfort is a sensation. Catastrophe is an interpretation. When these merge, emotional intensity escalates rapidly. A small frustration suddenly carries the weight of a threat. Observe how language shapes emotion. Saying this is unbearable creates a different internal response than saying this is unpleasant but manageable. One invites panic, the other preserves stability. The event remains identical. Your physiological reaction changes. This is not denial of difficulty. Stoicism never required pretending pain is pleasure. It requires precision. Seneca explains in Letters from a Stoic, letter 85, that we must examine impressions before accepting them as truth. Is this truly devastating or simply uncomfortable? Is this harm or merely inconvenience? When you separate sensation from narrative, something loosens. The mind stops feeding the emotion exaggerated significance. The body softens. You regain proportionality. What felt overwhelming becomes tolerable. What felt urgent becomes navigable. Most emotional spirals begin with exaggeration, not reality. Train yourself to describe experiences with accuracy rather than drama. Discomfort loses its power to dominate when it is no longer mistaken for disaster. Rule 3. Delay the emotional verdict. The first interpretation is rarely the most accurate, yet it is usually the one we believe. Someone speaks sharply, and the mind declares disrespect. A plan fails, and the mind declares defeat. An unexpected silence, and the mind declares rejection. Judgment arrives instantly. Emotion follows immediately, and soon the reaction feels justified. Marcus Aurelius writes in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 8, that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But that power exists precisely in the space most people never use. The pause between stimulus and conclusion. An impression is not a fact, it is a proposal. When you accept it without examination, you surrender authority. Epictetus advises in Discourses of Epictetus, Book 1, to say to every harsh appearance, you are an appearance and not the thing you claim to be. This delay is not hesitation, it is discipline. Time has a clarifying effect on emotion. What feels like an insult may reveal itself as stress. What feels like failure may reveal itself as redirection. What feels unbearable may dissolve into perspective. Immediate verdicts freeze perception at the most reactive moment. Delay does not suppress emotion. It prevents distortion from becoming identity. It allows reason to ask, what else could this mean? What is actually known? What is assumed? Often, intensity weakens simply because interpretation loses its urgency. Most suffering is accelerated by speed. Slow the judgment, and you slow the emotional cascade. In that pause, stability reappears. Choice re-enters. Reaction becomes response. Rule 4. Withdraw. Imaginary futures. Anxiety often feels like a response to reality, but much of it is a response to imagination. The mind projects forward, constructs scenarios, rehearses losses, failures, confrontations. The body reacts as if those events were already unfolding. Heart rate rises, muscles tense, peace dissolves. Nothing has happened, yet the nervous system prepares for impact. Seneca observes in Letters from a Stoic, letter 13, that we are more often frightened than harmed, and we suffer more from fear than from the things themselves. The future, as experienced by the anxious mind, is rarely a prediction. It is a narrative shaped by uncertainty and amplified by emotion. Notice the pattern. A possibility becomes a probability becomes inevitability. The imagined outcome acquires emotional weight. You begin responding to a fiction. Energy is spent defending against events that may never exist. Stoic practice calls for a return to cognitive honesty. What is happening now? What is actually present? Marcus Aurelius reminds himself, in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 7, not to let the future disturb him, for he will meet it if he must, with the same reason he uses now. Withdrawing imaginary futures is not indifference toward planning. It is refusal to emotionally inhabit scenarios that have not earned reality. Preparation belongs to reason. Suffering belongs only to what exists. When the mind stops living ahead of time, something stabilizes. The present regains solidity. The body exits unnecessary alarm. Clarity replaces anticipation. You are no longer dragged through dozens of potential lives. You return to the only one you are actually living. Rule 5. Protect cognitive sovereignty. Very few events have the power to invade your mind on their own. What enters through interpretation. A comment, a look, an opinion, a rumor. None of these carry inherent authority. Yet we grant them residence, replay them, defend against them, reshape our emotional state around them. Peace is not taken. It is yielded. Epictetus teaches in Discourses of Epictetus, Book 4, that if someone speaks ill of you, remember that they speak from what appears true to them. Their judgment belongs to their mind, not yours, but the moment you internalize it without examination, you surrender sovereignty. You allow an external voice to dictate an internal condition. Cognitive sovereignty is the discipline of guarding the gate, not by denial, but by scrutiny. Is this opinion a fact? Is this criticism accurate, partially true, or entirely projection? Does this deserve reflection or dismissal? Without this filter, the mind becomes public property. Marcus Aurelius writes in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 6, that the tranquility of the mind depends on how you handle impressions. Each unchallenged interpretation becomes a quiet chain. Each examined impression restores authority. Most people attempt to control others' behavior to feel stable. Stoicism reverses the equation. Stability emerges when others' behavior loses the power to define your inner state. You remain receptive, but not absorbent, aware, but not governed. When cognitive sovereignty is preserved, something profound changes. Opinions lose their sting. Provocations lose their grip. The mind no longer bends under every external movement. Peace becomes less fragile because authority returns to its rightful place. Rule 6. Train. Emotional endurance, not escape. The instinct to avoid discomfort feels protective, but often it is corrosive. Each time you escape a difficult conversation, suppress a necessary decision, or distract yourself from unease, the mind learns the wrong lesson. It learns that discomfort is dangerous. Sensitivity increases. Resilience weakens. What was tolerable becomes overwhelming. Seneca writes in Letters from a Stoic, Letter 78, that difficulty strengthens the mind as labor strengthens the body. Yet modern life offers endless routes of escape. Scroll, numb, postpone, withdraw. Relief arrives quickly, but strength quietly erodes. Avoidance does not eliminate discomfort, it lowers your capacity to face it. Emotional endurance is not passive suffering, it is deliberate exposure to manageable difficulty. Remaining present with tension without collapsing into reaction. Allowing uncertainty without demanding immediate reassurance. Experiencing discomfort without dramatizing it into harm. Marcus Aurelius reflects in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 5, that the mind becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If every discomfort is labeled unbearable, fragility becomes identity. If discomfort is treated as training, endurance becomes character. What you repeatedly avoid begins to control you. What you steadily face begins to lose its power. Anxiety shrinks when it is not obeyed. Fear softens when it is not fed escape. Stability grows not from comfort, but from the ability to remain intact within discomfort. Peace is often mistaken for the absence of disturbance. The Stoics teach that real peace is the capacity to remain steady even when disturbance appears. Rule 7. Make peace. Your default position, most people treat peace as a recovery state, something to rebuild after stress, conflict, disappointment. Stoic practice proposes a reversal. Peace is trained before chaos, not after it. It becomes a baseline, a mental posture carried into events rather than extracted from them. Marcus Aurelius reminds himself in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 2, that you will meet interference, ingratitude, arrogance, and unpredictability. Not as exceptions, but as conditions of life. When disturbance is expected, it loses the power of surprise. When peace is conditional, it is constantly negotiated. A default position of peace is not naive optimism. It is internal preparation. A mind calibrated daily through reflection, awareness, and cognitive correction. You do not wait for tension to arise before stabilizing yourself. You maintain stability as a continuous discipline. Epictetus teaches in the Enchiridion that circumstances do not adapt themselves to your desires, but your desires can adapt themselves to circumstances. Peace becomes durable when it is no longer dependent on favorable outcomes. It becomes a chosen stance, not a fragile reward. When peace is the default, reactions slow naturally. Friction meets resistance less often. The mind remains anchored even as situations shift. You move through uncertainty without feeling psychologically displaced. Most lives are spent chasing moments of calm. Stoicism invites something more demanding and more powerful. Build a mind that begins from calm. Let the world be unstable. Let your inner position remain steady. Seen separately, these rules appear as techniques. Practiced together, they form a new mental architecture. You stop arguing with reality, and resistance no longer drains your energy. You separate discomfort from catastrophe, and proportion returns to experience. You delay the emotional verdict, and reaction loses its speed. You withdraw imaginary futures, and anxiety loses its theater. You protect cognitive sovereignty, and the mind is no longer governed by external noise. You train endurance instead of escape, and stability grows under pressure. You establish peace as your default position, and calm becomes your starting point rather than your destination. What changes is not personality, but perception. Not the world, but your relationship with it. Events continue. Uncertainty remains. People behave as they will, yet the internal turbulence that once accompanied every disruption begins to weaken. Because the true source of disturbance was never life itself, but the interpretations, resistances, exaggerations, and reflexes operating unnoticed. Marcus Aurelius writes in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 6, that if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this estimate you have the power to revoke. That power is not dramatic. It is exercised quietly, moment by moment, judgment by judgment. Peace is no longer fragile because it is no longer borrowed from circumstances. It is generated by clarity, sustained by reason, protected by discipline. Stability becomes less an achievement and more a way of moving through existence. Peace is often imagined as a distant condition, waiting somewhere beyond achievement, resolution, or perfect circumstances. Stoic wisdom dissolves this illusion. Peace is not found at the end of control, it emerges at the end of illusion. The illusion that life must obey you before you can remain steady. The illusion that emotion must dominate you before you can respond. The illusion that stability depends on silence from the world rather than clarity within the mind. What you have explored here is not comfort, but alignment. Alignment with reality as it is. Alignment with the limits of control. Alignment with reason as the governing faculty of your inner life. Marcus Aurelius reflects in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius, Book 12, that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Not because thoughts change fate, but because they determine how fate is experienced. Nothing in this practice removes difficulty. Challenges will appear. Losses will occur. Uncertainty will remain faithful to its nature. Yet something fundamental can shift. The mind no longer collapses under what it cannot command. Emotion no longer dictates meaning. Reaction no longer replaces judgment. Strength becomes quieter. Stability becomes less visible, more constant. A calm that does not need display. A confidence that does not require validation. A peace that does not panic at disturbance because it was never built on the promise of a disturbance-free life. Carry these principles not as ideas, but as disciplines. Test them in frustration, in uncertainty, in moments where the old reflexes attempt to return. This is where philosophy ceases to be knowledge and becomes character. If you enjoyed the video, like, share, and subscribe for more Stoic insights, and watch the latest videos.